In this video, I'm going to talk with you a little bit about drawing things, so to speak. So we have these balloons in sort of the intro video, and I want to briefly talk a little bit about how that works, and then we'll look at some other examples. So in here, if we scroll down, you can see stuff related to the text. All right. You can see some lines in here, right? So this line, let's see, I believe those are these. Okay, let's see if we change this real fast, we can just see if that's what the change is. Yep. So this affected the X value of the lines. Okay, here those lines are. Alright, so drawing them with a series of variables, which gets a little confusing, but we have lines. Essentially all this is just the first position to whatever the last position is going to be, the X and Y value of those positions. So you can figure them out with numbers. You can also use stuff with variables, but that's lines. Alright, and I have them on the parts of the text here, but obviously they're also attached to these balloons, right? And then we have some dots somewhere. These are the dots, all right, on each side of to you. Okay, and then we have these balloons. So these balloons are essentially circles, which is an ellipse where you have only one value for size. If I were to make another value for size here and multiply by like 2, now we would get some funky ovals, right? So ellipse is an interesting function in that it can take 3 parameters, or you can add a 4th parameter to make them into ovals instead of circles. Okay, so we have the ellipse, all right, and then here you can see we have a line. Okay, the line is it has 2 sets of X and Y, all right, and you can see that relates, or it's similar-ish to the balloon. So it gets a little confusing when you have all of these values in there, right? But if I were to just go ahead and make a new balloon, this is why we didn't talk about my example one earlier, because there's just a lot of stuff in here. So if we were to do this and we were to say that fill is equal to, I'm just gonna make just a black balloon, all right, and it probably wants this in quotes. Is it happy now? Yes, it's happy now. Okay. And so let's say that I'm just going to put this at 300, 300, just to sort of show you how this works. 200. All right. And then I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those for right now, because I just want to show you just a balloon without all the fancy stuff. So we have a line here. So the starting value is going to be 300. And this is going to be 300. Actually, let's make this a different color. RGB. I'm going to make this just green, and I'll show you why in a moment. And then here, I'm going to make this to maybe 500. And this is going to be, this will stay at 300. Is that right? No, I got those flipped. This will be 300. This will be 500. Because this is the X, this is the Y, so I want the string to go down. So if I run this, where it's drawn after the background color, okay, we have this balloon here, and it's a little bit hard to see because of where I've positioned it, but that's okay. If I put this after the draw text, there we go. So we have this balloon here, right? It's drawing the line from the center of this. So I need to keep in mind where things are relational to one another, right? So if I make this by 500 and I do this, now we don't see the line at all, right? Because the starting point and the stopping point are the same. We have just actually this little bitty dot here. If I make this to 400, now it should go from the bottom of the balloon down, right? So it starts at 400, right? And it goes to 500. It's 100 pixels tall. Now you might say, like, well, how did I choose 400 for this? And why did I choose 500? Why did I choose 300? Okay, So 300, 300 is where the circle is drawn. All right. It has a diameter. It has a diameter of 200 pixels. That's its size. Okay. So if it's at 300, 300, that's here, and the diameter is 200, then it's 100 on each side, right? So here's 300 plus 100 equals 400. So that's why this starts at 400. When we started at 500, that little dot is way down here because it's 300 plus 100 plus 100, because this is the diameter, not the radius. So that's kind of how that works, right? And then the stopping point, it stays on the 300x value, right? But it goes down 100 pixels to here to 500. So if we wanted this line to be longer, just make the stopping point longer, right? So that's sort of how you can draw with this, all right? And then of course, to make them move, then you got to start throwing in variables in there, so that way the values can change, right? And that was why that other one looked crazy. All right, if I wanted to, I could create something like let's change val equals 0. All right, and then wherever I just drew that balloon, here it is. All right, I could say that, let's see, so x, y. I could say let's add change val to this. Alright, and then I can add change val to each of these y values. Alright, and then I need to actually have change val change, right? Because I made the variable, but I didn't do anything with it yet, right? So if I do +1, now the balloon drops, right? Because those values are getting larger. If I do subtracted by 1, now the balloon should go up, right? So that's how you can change those things. And if you want it to be faster, then just change the values by a larger number. Now, these ones stop, whereas my green one didn't stop. So what I could also do is I could throw a conditional in here and say that if change val is less than maybe 200, all right, and I forgot to put these in parentheses, all right, and throw this down here. Now it's going to only subtract this value as long as change val isn't 200. So it's only going to go 200 pixels up before it stops changing this value. All right, and that value was too high. Let's try 100. Let's try 50. Oh, I'm subtracting. Alright, I forgot I was subtracting. So of course it keeps going. Because I'm subtracting, then this needs to be like greater than a negative value, negative 50. There we go. That stopped real short, didn't it? So maybe 200. Alright, if it's going up, it's negative values. If it's going to go down, then it's positive values. So +3. Right? So, there you go. Drawing things, moving them around. Okay. Now, if I look around online, there are some that are fairly intense. I think this one was pretty cool. Alright, if I run this, alright, we have this. If I click, oh, no, this was not the cool one. Where was the good one? I don't think it was this one. There we go. Look at that balloon. That is an impressive balloon. Right, so I just made a circle and put a line on it. But here, if we look at what they did, they have a circle. They actually call theirs a circle instead of an ellipse. They have a triangle. That's the little part down here. Right? They have an ellipse. This ellipse is probably that little highlight, the little glare spot on the balloon. And then instead of a straight line, they used this Bezier function to create the little curvy line, right? And I'm not going to get into Beziers. Beziers are confusing. I mean, just look at this. This is crazy. But if you wanted to, you could borrow this code and tweak the values to try to make your own curve. But it's it's yeah, it's not enjoyable. And keep in mind that all of these are variables, so you couldn't just type balloon.x and balloon.y, right? You would actually have to put numbers in here. So if I were to maybe change all of these to, let's see, you could change them to 0 if there's nothing there, right? But I could also just leave in whatever the plus values are, and then maybe you can kind of see sort of how these curves work. Sort of. They're funky. All right, there. It's over there. I would probably need to add like plus 10 or plus 100 or something to all of these, so that way you could actually see it better on the screen. So it's kind of a little ways away from that margin, or from the edge of the paper. There you go. Right, so that kind of gives you the idea. It's not perfect. We lost part of the little curve. Probably had to do something with the balloon.x and balloon.y values, but you get the idea, right? So it creates curves, right? So you could play with these if you wanted to try to see how these values change what's drawn.